Hello, my name's Lunel. For most of my life, my parents made sure the world forgot I existed. They locked me in our basement, said it was for my own good, and then walked away like I was a ghost that embarrassed them. When they came back, they acted as if nothing happened, as if I was just a bad memory they could paint over. But memories have a way of crawling back, and this time, I wasn't the one trapped. They were. So tell me, how far would your family go to erase you? The smell of roasted rosemary chicken hit me the second I stepped through the front door. My mother's house hadn't changed in years. The same beige walls, the same photographs of smiling faces that never included me. The laughter from the dining room was loud, theatrical, like the sound of a stage play performed for neighbors who didn't know the script. I stood there a moment longer than I should have, clutching the bottle of wine I'd brought out of politeness. I wasn't sure why I came. Maybe I wanted to believe things could be different, or maybe I just wanted to see how much further they'd push before I finally broke. When I walked into the dining room, all eyes flicked toward me. And then, just as quickly, away again. "Oh, you made it," Mayless said, her tone flat as she adjusted the napkin in her lap. My father gave a small nod from the head of the table, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth. My mother didn't look up at all. There was a long rectangular table stretched under the chandelier, with polished silverware and too many glasses. My place setting was at the very end, a lonely chair next to the sideboard, half a meter from the rest. It was the kind of distance you could feel even without measuring. I sat down quietly, unfolding the napkin and placing it on my lap. The chatter picked up again, circling around the new neighbors, a church fundraiser, Mayless's upcoming promotion. I tried to follow, smiling when it felt appropriate, but every time I spoke, the sound of my voice seemed to fall into an empty space. "Actually, I think that was last summer," I said at one point when Ellis mentioned the family barbecue. He didn't answer. My mother lifted her glass and took a slow sip. The silence that followed was short but heavy, the kind of silence that presses on your ribs. One of the guests, a woman with a pearl necklace who smelled like powder and hairspray, turned to my mother. "Oh, I didn't realize you had another daughter," she said cheerfully. I froze. I saw my mother's lips tighten before she smiled. "She's not really involved with the family," she said lightly, tilting her head toward me without really looking. "More of a guest these days." The laughter at the table faltered. Someone coughed. I felt the back of my throat burn, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I smiled, the kind of smile that costs something. "That's right," I said softly. "You just passing through?" For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mayless giggled, too high-pitched, and raised her glass. "To family," she said, forcing the mood back into place. The others followed, the sound of clinking glassware like tiny apologies that meant nothing. Dinner went on. I ate slowly, my fork scraping against the porcelain as conversations flowed around me like I wasn't there. The scent of garlic bread, the hum of conversation, the fake warmth, it all blurred together. I kept watching the chandelier lights tremble in my water glass, distorted and shifting. Across the table, my mother's bracelets chimed every time she reached for something. Her hands were graceful, rehearsed. She loved performing domestic elegance, feeding people, managing appearances. That was her real art. When she finally looked my way, it was with that same polite smile she gave the guests. Not a mother's smile, a hostess's. I thought about the last time she'd called me baby. I was 12, standing in the kitchen, crying over a broken science fair project. She'd touched my hair and said, "You'll figure it out." That was before everything got quiet between us, before I became the one everyone politely forgot. As dessert came out, her famous lemon tart, I excused myself, saying I needed to check a message. No one objected. I left my untouched plate on the table and walked into the hallway. The sound of laughter followed me, thinner now, strained. From the kitchen doorway, I heard my name. I froze again, just out of sight. She's always been a bit of a problem," my mother was saying. "Not in a bad way, just difficult." Mayless responded, whispering but sharp. "You shouldn't have invited her. You know how awkward it gets." "I had to," my mother said. "People talk." There was the sound of dishes being rinsed, water running. My father's voice joined, low and resigned. "She's family, Sable." "She was," my mother corrected. "Let's not pretend." Something inside me shifted. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was colder than that, quieter. I turned, picked up my coat from the back of a chair, and walked toward the front door. The floorboards creaked like old bones beneath my feet. Outside, the night was soft and cool. The stars hung low above the dark outline of the oak trees. I stood there for a while, breathing, holding on to the silence like it might save me. My hands shook slightly, but not from weakness, from control. I started walking down the driveway, the gravel crunching under my shoes. Behind me, the laughter started again, faint and hollow. It sounded like it came from another world, one I was never meant to belong to. Halfway to my car, I stopped. Through the window, I could see the dining room again. The warm light, the faces, the life I used to think was mine. My glass of water was still there, untouched. I realized something then. This wasn't the first time I'd been erased. It was just the first time I saw it clearly. As I drove away, the streetlights flickered past like silent witnesses. I promised myself I'd remember every word, every glance, every moment they pretended I wasn't there. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I knew I wouldn't let it fade this time. By the time I got home, it was late. I took off my shoes by the door, turned on the dim light above the kitchen sink, and poured myself a glass of water. The same kind my mother left untouched for me. It tasted like nothing, but it steadied me. Upstairs, in my small bedroom, I opened the box under my bed, the one I hadn't touched in years. Inside were old photographs, a few letters, and a VHS tape labeled only with my grandfather's handwriting. I stared at it for a long minute before closing the box again. Not tonight, I thought, but soon. I sat on the edge of the bed, looking at my reflection in the window. The same brown hair, the same tired eyes, but something in my expression had changed. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was awareness. They could call me a guest. They could rewrite my place at the table. But they couldn't erase the truth that still lived inside this house, or the part of me that refused to stay silent forever. I turned off the light, the hum of the fridge below filling the quiet. Somewhere, far off, thunder rolled, promising a storm. But that dinner wasn't the worst part. It was what came after, in ink and silence. The storm passed quietly in the night. Morning came in with a pale, heavy light, casting soft shadows across my room. It made everything feel muffled, like the world had decided to whisper for a while. But outside, the gutter still dripped steadily, like a countdown I couldn't ignore. I sat up in bed, the sheets twisted around me. My body felt heavy, my mind still echoing with fragments of last night. The clinking of wine glasses, Melis's effortless laughter, my mother calling me a guest, as if the word didn't sting. It echoed somewhere beneath my ribs. I dressed without turning on the light, simple jeans, a plain shirt, no makeup. The hallway was cold as I stepped out, colder than it should have been, not just in temperature, but in memory, as if the house itself was trying to forget I'd ever lived in it. The stairs creaked underfoot as I walked down, each step reminding the house I was still here. In the kitchen, morning sun filtered through half-closed blinds, striping the floor. Melis stood by the counter, stirring her coffee, her posture relaxed. My mother sat at the table, reading a newspaper, her glasses slipping down her nose. "Morning," I said, voice quiet. No one looked up right away. My mother replied without lifting her eyes. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep." She hummed in that non-committal way she had, neither care nor concern. I poured myself coffee and leaned against the counter. The air smelled of toasted bread. No one asked how I slept. They never did. I glanced toward the living room. Framed photos lined the mantel. At first glance, it looked the same. But then I noticed a space where something used to be. A photo of us at the lake. Me between Dad and Melis. My hair wet. All of us smiling. In its place now. My parents with the neighbors. "You redecorated," I said. Melis turned slightly. "Just cleared some clutter." Clutter. That's what I was now. I took a sip of coffee, bitterer than usual, and walked away. "I'll be upstairs." No one stopped me. The hallway upstairs had always been lined with memories, birthdays, holidays, graduations. But now, each photo excluded me, cropped memories, rewritten history. I paused at the study. The door was ajar. Sunlight cut across the room in neat lines. The air smelled faintly of lemon polish. My father's old chair sat slightly pulled back, like someone had just been there. Drawn to the desk, I let my fingers skim the smooth wood until something caught my eye. A manila envelope, center-aligned, marked legal. I opened it. Typed pages slid out, clean, official, cold. I scanned the first line and froze. Voluntary transfer of property rights. My name appeared on the second line, my signature at the bottom, but I had never seen these papers before. I stared at the signature. It looked like mine, almost. But it was off. The L in Lunel was slightly wrong. The date was from 4 months ago. And just like that, I remembered. Melis had come to my apartment back then, claiming it was hospital paperwork for Dad. I'd been half asleep, just off a night shift. "It's just insurance forms," she'd said. "Sign here. I'll handle the details." I'd trusted her. I sank into the leather chair, rereading every word. I'd unknowingly signed away my claim to the house, the land, and even my grandfather's inheritance. All of it. Gone. Signed away under false pretenses. It wasn't a mistake. It was a betrayal. Downstairs I heard laughter. Melis again. Light, relaxed, like nothing had happened. I put the papers back in the envelope and stood up. Calm. Focused. This wasn't a scene I'd scream through. I wasn't that girl anymore. In the kitchen, Melis leaned against the counter, scrolling on her phone. I placed the envelope on the table between us. "When did I become someone you had to lie to?" I asked. She glanced up, her smile too quick, too smooth. "It wasn't like that, Lunel." "Looked exactly like that." She sighed, brushing hair from her face. "You said you didn't want anything from this place, so why does it matter?" "It matters when you lie." My mother lowered her paper. "What's going on?" I looked at her. "Apparently I signed away everything." "Without knowing." She paused, then quietly said, "Maybe it's for the best. You've been gone so long, honey. Houses need caretakers, not visitors." There it was again, that word. My father walked in from the porch, mug in hand. He saw the tension, said nothing, just sipped his coffee and stared out the window. I pushed the envelope toward Melis. "You should know. I keep copies of everything I sign." Her face twitched, just for a second. My mother's lips tightened. My father mumbled something about the garage and left the room. I didn't wait for a reply. I turned and walked out. Upstairs, everything felt tighter. The air, the walls, even my thoughts. When I reached the top of the stairs, I stopped. My bedroom door was gone, not closed, gone. The frame stood open, revealing what had become a storage room. Boxes, an old vacuum, broken lamps. My room, erased. I stepped inside slowly. Dust floated in the air. The posters, furniture, curtains, gone. The walls were bare. It was like I'd never lived here. Then, tucked in a closet shelf under towels, I found it. A small, worn book. My favorite from childhood. I picked it up, brushing off the dust. The cover bent, the pages yellowed. I opened it. On the inside cover, where I'd written my name in blue ink, someone had drawn a thick red line through it. Jagged, harsh, permanent. I touched it gently, the dried ink rough beneath my finger. That red line said everything they never dared to. I stood there, surrounded by cardboard and silence, holding the last piece of me they hadn't thrown away, but still tried to erase. The red mark on my name lingered like a stain in my memory, long after I'd left that hollow room. By the time evening rolled around, the sun was little more than a glowing thread across the horizon. The house had that strange hush again, the kind that presses down on you, thick and wet, like fog after rain. Everyone was gone. Melis had taken Mom to some church event, and Dad was likely out in the garage, buried in his eternal ritual of fixing things that didn't need fixing. For once, I had the house, and the silence, to myself. It felt like I could finally exhale. I don't know what drew me to the basement. Maybe it was the quiet. Maybe it was the way the air upstairs still felt heavy with judgment. My hand hovered over the basement door's handle. That door was more than just wood and paint. It was a border, a boundary between what our family pretended to be and what we shoved out of sight. I flicked the light switch. A tired yellow glow poured down the narrow stairwell. The basement air hit me like a breath held too long, stale, cold, and dense with secrets. I descended slowly, fingertips brushing the rough wood railing, each step creaking underfoot. Down here, time didn't pass. It waited. Boxes were stacked floor to ceiling, all labeled in my mother's crisp handwriting. Christmas decor, old bills, Thane's tools. I scanned them, not knowing exactly what I was searching for, only that I'd know when I found it. Then, tucked beneath a workbench, a faded box caught my eye. The label simply read, Misk, Grandpa's. A smile touched my lips, quick and bittersweet. Grandpa had been the only one who ever saw me, really saw me, practical, quiet, and honest in a way that made people uncomfortable. Truth doesn't vanish just because people stop saying it, he used to tell me. I pulled the box out. The tape cracked, the corners worn soft by time. Inside, I found photographs, an old pocket watch, some letters tied with string, but beneath those, a VHS tape, clear plastic case, handwritten label, for her, if she ever asks. My stomach dropped. Her? He meant me. I swallowed hard, palms sweating. Across the room sat Dad's dusty old VCR, still connected to a small TV. My fingers worked on autopilot, sliding the tape in. The screen came to life with a flicker of static, then settled. And there he was. Grandpa, older than I remembered, sitting in his recliner, wearing that threadbare blue plaid shirt. He looked tired, but present, real. If you're watching this, he began, his voice quiet, steady, then they've probably erased you. I didn't breathe. But I didn't forget, he said. I saw what they were doing. You were never wrong to ask questions. I dropped onto an old crate, eyes locked on the screen. I know they told you not to bring up the family tree at school, said it was just a project. But the truth, Lunel, is, it wasn't a mistake. They didn't want your name on it. Malis changed the forms. Your mother said it was simpler that way. His words hit me like a slap. That night came back in a rush. Scissors, glue, colored paper. The tree I'd worked so hard on. I'd proudly included everyone, even Grandpa. And then, the next day, my name was gone. Just gone. I'd cried all afternoon, but no one cared. Grandpa's voice returned. They punished me for telling you, said I was causing trouble, but I couldn't stay silent. You had the right to know you were not invisible. The screen flickered, image warping slightly. If they made you doubt yourself, don't. You were right to question, right to see what others ignored. Then, static. Silence. I hit rewind. Play. Nothing more. Just his face frozen in time, lips parted as if he still had more to say. Tears blurred my vision. I didn't even know I'd been crying. I turned to the shelves. More boxes, labeled by year, 1998, 2001, 2004. I opened them one by one. School papers, letters, receipts. A family's attempt to rewrite its own history. In one box, I found old report cards. My name, Lunel, written carefully in the early years. Then, by 6th grade, someone else had crossed it out in pen and replaced it with Malis. My mother's handwriting. I laughed, but it came out wrong, bitter and sharp. Unbelievable. Footsteps creaked overhead, then a knock at the top of the stairs. Lunel? It was Era, our neighbor. Her voice was soft, tentative. You down there? Yeah, I called up, wiping my face. Just looking for something. She stepped down halfway, flashlight beams slicing through the gloom. Your mom asked me to drop this off. A glass dish, casserole probably. She set it on the bottom step. You okay, hun? You look pale. Just found something unexpected, I said. She nodded, eyes lingering on me. That basement always creeped me out. But if you ever need to talk, you know where I live. Thanks, I whispered. She left. The silence returned, but it didn't feel as lonely. I turned back to the TV. Grandpa's frozen face was fading into black. The hum of the VCR filled the room. Memories surfaced. Him teaching me how to fix radios, the smell of solder and wood polish. Every lie makes a noise before it dies, he used to say. Now I understood. I reached into the box again. At the bottom, something glinted. A key, taped to a folded note. For the chest under the stairs. I turned, and there it was. A wooden chest beneath a drop cloth, nestled beside the water heater. The key fit. The lock clicked open. Inside were more tapes. Unlabeled. 10? 12? Beneath them, a notebook. I flipped through it. Dates. Observations. Conversations. All in Grandpa's careful writing. Notes about my mother. About Malis. About me. Not just memories. Evidence. The final page ended mid-sentence. If they keep pushing her away, she'll disappear for good, and when that happens, they'll blame her for leaving. I closed the notebook, holding it to my chest. Something shifted inside me. Not just pain, not just rage, a steadiness, a sense of clarity. They hadn't erased me. They'd only buried me. And I had started digging. I didn't sleep that night. The cold from the basement floor seeped into my bones, but it wasn't the chill that kept me awake. It was the clarity. For years, I'd confused silence with peace. Now I knew better. Silence was the sound of everyone pretending I didn't exist. When morning light finally crept through the narrow basement window, I sat up, brushing the dust from my sleeves. My back ached, my eyes burned, but my mind felt sharper than it had in years. Upstairs, I heard voices, footsteps, clinking dishes, laughter that sounded like it had been rehearsed. I climbed the stairs slowly. Each step creaked beneath me like a warning. When I opened the door, sunlight poured into the hallway. The air smelled of syrup and fresh coffee. Something sweet was baking. Brunch. Of course, my mother never wasted a chance to perform domestic perfection for guests. I stood just outside the dining room, unseen for a moment. Two women from the neighborhood, a family friend, and my cousin Avery were already seated. The table was set beautifully. Every plate, napkin, and face was accounted for. Except mine. The chair I'd sat in the night before was gone. In its place sat Avery, laughing too loudly, her voice bright and empty. My mother, mid-pour with a crystal pitcher of orange juice, spotted me. Her smile faltered, only for a second, before returning, cold and composed. Morning, I said as I stepped inside, heads turned, a beat too slow. I wasn't part of this scene, and they all knew it. You're up early, my mother said lightly, as though nothing was off. I could say the same, I replied, keeping my tone even. Malis didn't miss a beat. We didn't think you'd want to join, she said, eyes flicking toward me. You seemed tired last night. Apparently not tired enough to miss another family event I wasn't invited to. Silence settled like dust. One of the guests stirred her coffee to avoid eye contact. My mother cleared her throat. Why don't you grab something from the kitchen if you're hungry? There's plenty left. Right, I said. Plenty. I turned and walked away, past the hallway of carefully framed memories. Birthdays, weddings, holidays, all curated to tell a story. I slowed near the end of the hall. A new photo had been added since I was last home. A large family portrait. Malis's engagement party. I remembered that day well. I'd stood on the left, holding the family dog, grinning like I was trying too hard. But in the frame now, I was gone. They had cropped me out. I stepped closer, staring at the space where I had been. The dog was still there, sitting obediently, but the space beside it, the space where I had stood, was empty. It had been resized and reframed without me. Not anger, not shock, just something heavier, like being underwater, realizing you're too far from the surface to scream. Behind me, soft footsteps. "Who's that lady next to the dog?" a small voice asked. I turned. A little boy, one of the guests' kids, stood pointing at the blurred edge of the photo. A faint shadow of my arm remained. Malis appeared behind him. "Oh, that?" she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just someone who used to work with us." Her words hit like a stone. The boy nodded and ran off. Malis met my gaze, her expression unchanged. "You shouldn't take it personally. It's just a picture." "Right," I said. "Just a picture." I walked away before she could see my hands shaking. In the kitchen, the sugary air felt sickly sweet. I gripped the counter until my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream. Instead, I inhaled deeply. Control. Always control. They had erased me. Not just emotionally, literally. Cut out from their images, their stories, their world. But I was still here, still breathing, still watching. I returned to the basement and found the box I'd opened the night before. I slid the VHS tape inside my bag, not to save it, but to use it. A relic turned weapon. This time, silence wouldn't protect them. Upstairs, laughter drifted through the floorboards, muffled, hollow. I looked through the tiny basement window. Sunlight spilled across the backyard, too bright for a house this cold. I climbed the stairs, walked through the quiet living room, and stepped onto the porch. The air outside was crisp, clean. I took out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. There it was, a name I hadn't seen in years, Mara Lewis. We'd gone to college together. She became a real estate lawyer. I tapped the call button before I could hesitate. It rang twice. "Hello? Mara? It's Lunel." A pause, then a warm voice. "Lunel! Oh my God, how long has it been? How are you?" I gave a short laugh. "Complicated. Listen, I need some legal advice. I think I signed something I shouldn't have, something my family pushed on me." "What kind of document?" "A deed, property transfer, my childhood home." "Do you have a copy?" "I do now." "Send it to me. All of it. And don't speak to them until I say so, okay?" Relief prickled behind my eyes. "Thank you, Mara. Really." "Hey," she said gently. "Whatever they did, it's not the end. Trust me." When the call ended, I stood motionless, phone in hand. Sunlight cast long shadows across the porch, stretching like grasping fingers. Inside, I saw the brunch table, my mother still smiling, Malis still glowing, my chair still gone. But I wasn't. They had tried to erase me, but in doing so, they'd made me dangerous, unpredictable, and that was something they couldn't frame or crop. I took one final look at the house, this curated prison, then walked down the driveway. Gravel crunched beneath my feet, steady and deliberate. The wind hummed. Birds sang. Life moved forward. And they could cut me out of every photo, every story, every memory, but they couldn't stop me from writing the ending. And now, I was ready to write it in ink. By the time I pulled up to the house, the sun was sinking behind the oak trees, casting streaks of orange and gold through the dense branches. The evening air was thick with the scent of grilled meat, sweet smoke curling upward into the twilight. Laughter floated over the backyard fence, light, familiar, careless. They were celebrating again. Ellis had gotten another promotion at the bank, regional management, apparently. That was enough for my mother to throw a full-blown barbecue, the kind with paper lanterns, homemade bunting, and enough potato salad to feed a small army. Neighbors milled around with drinks in hand, some barely acquaintances, others distant relatives who probably couldn't spell our last name. Everyone was invited. Everyone except me. I parked on the street, angled toward escape, and sat there for a long moment. The warm hum of voices spilled through the open windows. They had rewritten me out of their lives so thoroughly that my absence didn't even raise eyebrows anymore. But tonight wasn't about being seen. Tonight was about being heard. The side gate creaked slightly as I slipped into the yard, unnoticed. The backyard looked like a magazine spread. The warm gleam of string lights, soft music pulsing from hidden speakers, laughter spilling over clinking glasses. Sable stood near the grill, resplendent in pearls and polished grace, laughing too loudly with the church ladies. Maylise, always the poised one, poured wine for guests with a smile that never touched her eyes. Dad leaned against the porch post, beer in hand, quiet as usual, an expert in staying uninvolved. I hovered near the shadows, absorbing the scene. No one flinched. No one turned. It was as if I didn't exist. Again. Then Ellis spotted me. "Hey, you came!" he called across the lawn, flashing his easy grin. "Didn't think we'd see you tonight." "Wouldn't miss it," I said, the words flat and unreadable. He clapped me on the shoulder and motioned toward the food table. "Grab a plate. Mom's famous potato salad's already going fast." "Of course it is," I murmured, brushing past him. As I moved through the crowd, every detail sharpened. The sizzle from the grill, the echo of someone's laugh, the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. I found myself near the patio, just in time to hear the clink of a glass tapping gently. Maylise was standing now, her wine raised high. "To family," she said, her voice polished and performative. "And to the moments that test who we really are. When Dad got sick and everything felt like it was falling apart, we pulled together. We carried each other." There was scattered applause. I felt my stomach twist. She went on, as if reading from a script. "We paid the hospital bills. We held the house down. We proved that blood still means something." Sable chimed in, voice light and casual. "Some people vanish when things get tough, but not this family. We endure." The crowd chuckled. I stood motionless, a storm building behind my ribs. They were telling my story, but they were telling it wrong. My hand tightened around my glass. The buzzing in my ears was louder than the conversations around me. I stepped forward, not loudly, but with the weight of someone finally refusing to disappear. "Interesting story," I said clearly, the calmness in my voice cutting through the noise, especially since I was the one who paid those hospital bills. Silence fell like a curtain. Maylise blinked, still holding her wine. "What?" "I paid for Dad's treatment. You remember, right? When insurance wouldn't cover the full amount. I maxed out my credit card, took double shifts." "You were too busy planning a wedding to notice." Sable's expression turned hard, brittle beneath the gloss of lipstick. "Lunel, don't do this." I ignored her. My voice rose a half step, steady, razor sharp. "And Maylise, remember crying on my couch about your credit card debt, those designer bags, spa retreats? I never got back the money you promised to repay." Eyes shifted across the yard. Some guests cleared their throats. Others suddenly found their drinks fascinating. "This isn't the time," Sable said again, tighter now. "No, this is exactly the time," I snapped. "Since we're rewriting the truth, I figured I'd offer some editorial notes." Dad didn't look up, just kept staring at his drink like it held all the answers he never bothered to give. Maylise stepped closer, her voice low and sharp. "You're making a scene." "No," I replied. "I'm correcting the one you made when you decided I didn't matter." I turned to the guests, eyes I barely recognized, faces that had smiled at my erasure. "Want proof? Go inside. Check the hallway. You won't find me in a single photo. It's like I never existed." The music had stopped completely now. Even the breeze seemed to hesitate. Sable stepped forward, trying to reclaim control. "You need to leave." I met her gaze, unflinching. "Don't worry. I will. But first, remember this. Lies age poorly. They spoil. And the truth? It has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep you bury it." Maylise hissed under her breath. "You've lost your mind." "No," I said, setting my glass gently on the patio table. "For the first time, I've found it." I walked away, back through the yard, past stunned faces and a silence that screamed. The gate clicked shut behind me with a satisfying finality. Outside, the air was cooler, quieter. Fireflies blinked lazily near the bushes. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, the weight on my chest shifting slightly, lighter, but still there. I crossed the side lawn and sat on the old porch swing, letting it creak beneath me. Through the kitchen window, I could see them. Sable pacing, Malis furiously texting, Dad unmoved. The illusion was cracked now, but still they scrambled to tape it together. Then I heard footsteps. Turning slightly, I saw Jenna, Ellis's wife, standing just a few feet away. Her arms were crossed tightly, but her face was softer than I expected. I didn't know, she said quietly, about any of that. I'm sorry. I gave a small nod. Neither did I said, until I watched them rewrite it. She touched my shoulder gently before turning back to the house. The crickets sang in the silence. The air smelled like rain, new, restless, cleansing. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. A new email from Mara. Subject: Preliminary findings, property transfer documents. Message: You were right, the document is legally questionable. There's evidence of signature manipulation. My chest rose with a deep breath, and something unfamiliar curled at the corner of my mouth. A quiet, sharp smile. The next chapter of this story wouldn't be told with words. It would be told in court. The morning air carried that strange, heavy quiet, the kind that settles right before a storm breaks. 2 days had passed since the barbecue. 2 days since I'd opened Mara's email and seen the proof I'd been dreading. The signatures on those legal documents weren't mine. They'd forged them. My own parents had erased me, not just from their lives, but from paper, from existence. I should have left right then. Packed my car, driven until the house was nothing but a memory in the rearview mirror. But I needed something solid, physical proof that could survive denial, something that could hold up in a courtroom. So I stayed. The house that morning felt too still. The silence wasn't peace. It was the kind that hums, electric and uneasy, like a power line before it snaps. I sat up in the guest room, heartbeat loud in my ears. No TV murmuring downstairs. No footsteps. No clatter of dishes. Just the faint scent of coffee, long gone cold. I got dressed and stepped into the hallway. Light sliced through the blinds in dusty stripes, cutting across the floor. The door to my room was open wider than I'd left it. I frowned, an edge of unease crawling under my skin. When I turned back, something was wrong. My suitcase, the one I'd kept zipped by the dresser, was gone. A chill rippled through me. I checked the closet, the bathroom. Nothing. Then I glanced out the window, and my stomach dropped. There it was, sitting by the garbage bin in the driveway. The lid gaping open, clothes spilling out like trash. I went downstairs, every step heavier than the last. The kitchen smelled faintly of toast and bleach. My mother stood by the counter, drying a glass like she had all the time in the world. When she looked up, her eyes were calm. Too calm. "Morning," I managed, my voice tighter than I meant. "Why is my suitcase outside?" She didn't blink. "Because you packed it." "No," I said slowly. "I didn't." Her mouth twitched, but not into a smile. "You should have. You should have left when you had the chance." The words fell like stones between us. "What chance?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. She set the glass down carefully, the sound sharp in the silence. "You keep digging into things that should stay buried. That never ends well in this family." Her tone was so casual, so practiced, that it made my skin crawl. "Where's Dad?" I asked. "In the garage," she said without looking at me. "Don't bother him." I brushed past her. The air felt thicker with every breath, heavy with something unseen. In the living room, Malis was crouched over a box of old things. She looked up as I entered, a half smile curling on her lips. "Looking for something?" she asked lightly. "I was about to ask you the same thing." She stood and dusted off her hands. "Actually, I found something you might want to see. It's about Grandpa." "Downstairs." Her voice was casual, but too even. Rehearsed. I should have known. I should have turned around, grabbed my keys, and left. But curiosity, that old, stupid instinct, won. She opened the basement door, flipped on the light. A yellow bulb flickered weakly to life, casting thin light over the wooden stairs. "Why now?" I asked. "Because you've been asking questions," she said softly. "Maybe you'll find answers down there." I hesitated, then stepped down. The wood creaked beneath me. The air grew colder, carrying the damp smell of old concrete. I reached the bottom, turned, and froze. She wasn't behind me. The door slammed shut. A beat later, click, the lock. "Malis!" I shouted. "This isn't funny!" Silence. I pounded on the door, the sound hollow and desperate. "Open it! Do you hear me? Open the damn door!" No answer. Just my heartbeat, roaring in my ears. Then, faint voices above. 2, maybe 3. My mother's tone was unmistakable. "She'll leave eventually." "Are you sure?" Malis asked, voice small, uncertain. "She always does." The words cut through me. I sank to the steps, shaking. Time blurred. My throat went raw from calling out. The air turned stale and hot. I wandered through the basement, searching for anything. A crowbar, a loose pipe, a window. Anything that could get me out. Nothing. Just boxes, an old mattress, a furnace that hummed softly like a heartbeat. When I finally slumped onto the mattress, dust clung to my clothes, my palms raw from pounding. My phone had no signal. The weak blue glow of the screen flickered, then died. And then I heard it. Laughter. Muffled, above me. Followed by the faint clink of glasses, the low hum of conversation. A party. I crawled closer to the wall, pressed my ear against the plaster. Voices filtered through the vent, bright, casual, cruelly normal. "To new beginnings," Malis said. "One less loose end." A cheer went up. Tears stung my eyes, but I swallowed them. They didn't get to see me break. Not anymore. Then came the piano, slow, hesitant notes drifting down like ghosts. My father's melody, the one he'd taught me as a child. But now, each note sounded warped, hollow, a mockery. I pressed my forehead against the wall. "They think this will break me," I whispered. I reached into my bag, still slung over my shoulder, and pulled out the VHS tape my grandfather had left behind. The label read, "For her, if she ever asks." I stared at it, as if it could see me, too. "You were right," I said softly. "They did try to erase me, but I'm still here." Time stretched. The air thickened with dust and quiet. Somewhere in the dark, something inside me hardened. Not despair, something sharper. Resolve. When the light from the window began to shift from gold to gray, I stood. The small rectangular window near the ceiling gleamed faintly. I stacked old crates beneath it, climbing carefully. The lock was rusted, corroded by years of neglect. I pushed with all my strength. It resisted, then groaned, moved, not open yet, but not sealed either. I climbed back down, chest heaving, hands burning. The darkness didn't feel quite so absolute anymore. They thought they'd buried me alive, but they'd only built the wrong kind of cage, because now, the silence they feared, the silence they used against me, belonged to me. I sat down beside the tape, cold floor against my skin, and whispered to the dark. "The next time they see me, I won't be the one trapped." 7 days. That's how long I stayed away. Long enough for the dust to settle, for their smug sense of victory to take root, long enough to plan every step of my return. Outside, life moved on like none of it mattered. The news warned of another heat wave. Children laughed from the motel pool as I walked past with coffee in hand. Even the local mailman greeted me with a wave, never guessing the kind of storm I was preparing to walk back into. Mara's office handled the paperwork quickly, faxed forms, notarized declarations, signatures that sealed everything I had suspected into undeniable fact. My name, Lunel Hart, appeared again and again in bold, legal ink, on the deed, on the statement from the state property registry, on the affidavit that outlined, in crisp, emotionless language, the fraud committed against me by my own family. And then came the morning I'd been waiting for. The house on Sycamore Drive sat as pristine as ever, staged almost, like a photograph from a home living catalog. Its perfection felt theatrical, rehearsed, like they had pressed pause on their little performance until the audience, their brunch guests, arrived. From the sidewalk, I watched. Sable was in the kitchen, arranging tulips with careful precision. Malis checked her reflection in the microwave door, smoothing invisible lines on her beige blouse. Thane stood like a prop, adjusting his collar as if he had anywhere important to be. The dining table gleamed with champagne flutes and brunch plates. Their version of peace. Polished, curated, fake. "You ready?" the notary beside me asked, eyes steady. I exhaled slowly. More than ready. The doorbell echoed through the house like a warning bell. Malis appeared first, her silhouette graceful as ever, smiling by default. But when she opened the door and saw me, really saw me, the blood drained from her face. "Hello, Malis." I stepped inside with calm authority. The notary followed, along with 2 legal witnesses. All carried documents and a small recording device. No one spoke. The air had already thickened with tension. In the dining room, Sable turned, mid-laugh. Her face froze. "Lunel," she stammered. "Where have you—" I placed my bag on the counter, cutting her off. "You're right. I shouldn't be here." A flicker of satisfaction passed across her face. I continued. "I should be upstairs. Because this house, legally, it's mine." The room froze. Forks hovered mid-air. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator. Malis blinked. "Excuse me?" I pulled a thick envelope from my bag and laid it flat on the table between them. "This is a certified declaration from the state. The deed to this house was transferred to me 15 years ago through a trust my grandfather created before he died." Thane scoffed. "That's impossible." "The deed changed hands after I was coerced into signing forged documents," I cut in. "Documents your daughter claimed were hospital release forms. She lied, and you all played along." Sable's jaw clenched. "That's absurd." "It's documented," I said coldly. The notary stepped forward, handing out verified copies of the legal findings. "Forgery, fraud, coercion. You left a trail. Your fingerprints are literally on the envelope." Gasps rose from the guests. Some shifted uncomfortably. One woman, the pastor's wife, took out her phone and began recording discreetly. "You came here just to humiliate us?" Sable asked, standing now, voice trembling with fury. "No," I replied. "I came to hold you accountable." From my bag, I retrieved a small VHS tape, the same one that had been with me in that basement. I placed it next to the documents. "Let's hear from someone who can't be silenced." I turned on the TV and pressed play. The screen flickered. Static buzzed. Then a face appeared, aged, warm, familiar. My grandfather. "If you're watching this," he began, "then they've tried to erase you. But I didn't forget. I saw what they were doing. You were never wrong to question them. The truth was always yours." Every eye stayed glued to the screen. My mother paled. Malis gripped the back of a chair. "I left this house in her name," my grandfather said firmly, "because she was the only one I trusted to remember. If they've done to her what I feared, let this stand as witness." The tape ended. Silence. "I think that clears up who owns this place," I said calmly. Malis took a step toward me, voice quivering. "You don't understand. No, you don't understand. You lied, you manipulated, and now you're facing the consequences." I pulled out one final folder. "Remember how my diploma got lost in the move? How you told people I never graduated?" I opened it. The gold seal from my university gleamed. Valedictorian. Class of 2004. I locked eyes with Malis. "You skipped my graduation to plan your wedding." A hush fell over the room. "That's not true," Sable muttered. I turned to the notary. "All documents are verified and witnessed," she announced. "Ownership transfer to Ms. Ban Lunel Hart is effective immediately." like a thunderclap, her words shattered whatever illusion still lingered. Sable staggered backward. Thane stared at the paperwork like it might rewrite itself. Malis simply looked lost. I slid the documents into my bag. I'm giving you 30 days to leave. That's more kindness than I was ever shown. Sable whispered, You're really doing this? Yes, I said. Because you already did it to me. I walked through the house, past framed photos I was never in, past memories they tried to erase. The walls didn't look like mine. Not yet, but they would. At the front door, I turned one last time. They tried to erase me, I said. But now, they can't look away. The screen door clicked behind me. Not a slam, not a crash, just closure. The front door creaked open, and for a moment, I just stood there. The late afternoon sun filtered through the clouds, casting long shadows across the garden. The light, once golden and warm, now felt colder, distant, like the silence that clung to the air around me. After everything, the shouting, the verdict, the arguments that cracked the foundations of this home, the quiet was a different kind of loud. I stepped onto the grass barefoot. It was cool and slightly damp beneath my feet. The blades bent beneath me and sprang back up like they remembered me. As I walked, I passed the old magnolia tree, the one Mom and I planted when I was just a girl. It had grown tall and thick with blossoms, branches reaching upward like open arms. I placed a hand gently on one of the flowers. Its petals were soft, and the sticky sap clung to my skin. It was a living memory, one that hadn't betrayed me, one that had remained unchanged, even when everything else had. Inside the house, it was a different world. Chairs were crooked, cushions out of place, the kind of disarray left behind after emotional tremors, not physical ones. Half-empty wine glasses sat like ghostly guests who had overstayed their welcome. I could almost hear the echoes of raised voices, of decisions too long delayed, finally forced into light. Malis was pacing in the hallway. She didn't see me right away. Her movements were tight, frantic. Her reflection flickered in a mirror that used to hang by my high school bedroom. A mirror I once used to practice smiles, to adjust prom dresses, to imagine a life that felt far away now. She looked small in it. Not younger, just uncertain. I didn't stop to speak to her. There were words that could wait, truths that had already been spoken. Instead, I walked past her and toward the attic stairs. I had packed what I needed after the legal storm. Copies of the deed, my trust documents, the old cassette from Grandpa. But there was still something missing, something that had never sat right. I needed to search the last place in this house untouched by the chaos, the attic. It greeted me with dust and shadows. The air was thick, stale with time, with the scent of old wood and mothballs. Boxes were stacked in uneven towers, trunks layered in old scarves, broken lamps, mirrors wrapped in bedsheets. I moved slowly, carefully. Every creak of the floorboards beneath me was a warning not to rush. After a while, I found it. A leather-bound journal, tucked beneath a pile of garden catalogs. Its cover was cracked, worn with use and years. My hands trembled as I picked it up. I sat on the old trunk beside me and opened it. The first few pages were mundane. Grocery lists, flower orders, dinner party menus, notes about soil acidity, but then, several pages in, there it was. A heading scrawled in uneven ink, as though written during a moment of hesitation. Mistakes I regret. And under it, Lunel was a mistake. I tried to love her, but I never really could. My breath caught. My eyes refused to move. My mother's handwriting, messy, raw, stared back at me like an accusation. The ache I'd buried, the hope I had nursed for years, crumbled. I thought I was prepared. I thought justice in court would bring peace. But this was the truth that never got spoken aloud, and it shattered something quieter, deeper. I sank to the floor, curling the journal against my chest. I didn't scream. I didn't rage. I just sat there, letting the silence fold around me as tears slipped down my face, one by one. I leaned back against the attic wall, the journal clutched like a lifeline and a dagger. Then, a soft knock. "Lunel?" Ellis's voice, gentle. He stepped inside, unsure, holding a white envelope. "You should read this," he said, kneeling down to place it beside me. I wiped my cheek with the back of my hand, then reached for the envelope. My sister's handwriting. I knew it instantly. I hesitated, then opened it. "I don't know when I started hating you. Maybe it was jealousy, maybe I just followed Mom's lead. But I see now you were never the villain. I'm sorry. But I can't promise more than this. I hope you find peace, even if we never speak again." No embellishment, no plea for forgiveness, just plain, naked truth. I folded it carefully, slipping it between the journal's pages. My hands were still shaking, but my chest didn't feel as tight. Something had cracked open, and it wasn't breaking me, not anymore. The attic was colder now. The sun had shifted lower, dust motes danced in slanted rays. I stood, slow and stiff, and made my way back down the narrow stairs. The house was beginning to move again. A door opened. A floorboard creaked. Someone ran water in the kitchen. It wasn't peace, but it was movement, and movement was life. I walked through the living room, past the table where dinner had been set for 6, now with only 5 places. A missing chair, a missing presence. On the balcony above the garden, I paused. I placed the journal and letter on the wooden railing. Below me, the magnolia petals fluttered in the wind. I watched them spiral and fall, like soft memories released at last. Back inside, I walked toward the dining room. One plate remained, untouched. I filled it simply. Bread, cheese, roast vegetables. No ceremony, no conversation. Just survival. I set Grandpa's tape beside me. The cassette clicked, and his voice filled the space. "You matter. Even if they never said it, you do." His words reached the walls, the ceilings, the wounds. They filled every room that had ever silenced me. I nodded, my face still damp with tears. "I hear you," I whispered. And in the quiet that followed, I picked up a pen. For the first time in my life, I wrote my name down, and no one, not family, not legacy, not silence, dared cross it out. The morning light arrived slowly, gentle and golden, slipping through the curtains like a whisper. It painted soft stripes on the hardwood floor, warm and muted. I opened my eyes to the familiar ceiling of my room, not a borrowed room, not a temporary shelter, but mine. For the first time in years, maybe ever, I wasn't startled awake by memory or fear. I woke in peace. I sat up slowly. The sheets smelled faintly of lavender, and the pillow bore the subtle imprint of my dreams. I listened. The silence wasn't the hollow kind I'd come to dread, not the vacuum left behind by slamming doors or disappearing voices, but a tender, open kind. Silence as potential. Silence that could grow into music or conversation or nothing at all. And that was okay. Each step across the floor felt sacred. The house had not changed overnight, but I had. The hallway, with its creaky board near the corner, the smudge on the wall from when I once fell running with chalk-stained hands, it was all still here. But instead of haunting me, it held me. My fingers brushed a picture frame on the wall. A family portrait I remembered too well. Once altered to remove me entirely. But now, the original image had been restored. My face, between Malus and father, younger, unsure, but whole, it was back. Someone had brought it out of storage. Or maybe I had. I didn't remember doing it. Maybe the house had given it back to me. My thumb rested lightly on the glass. For the first time, it felt like the memory wasn't trying to erase me anymore. It was acknowledging that I had always been there. Downstairs, on the dining room table, papers lay stacked in perfect alignment. Notarized letters, title documents, all neatly signed. Everything legal, everything final. Ownership was no longer contested, no longer threatened. I sat in the old wooden chair that creaked in the same spot as always and picked up the last page, the final signature line. I paused for a moment, just long enough to feel the gravity of it, then pressed the pen to the paper. A simple stroke of ink, but behind it were years of longing, grief, and determination. I signed, Lunel Anders. The name settled into the page like it belonged, because it did. When I stepped out onto the porch, the air was crisp. A slight breeze moved the hedges and rustled the wind chimes. Birds chirped somewhere in the distance, and a car's engine hummed to life nearby. I made my way to the mailbox, where the old nameplate still clung in place, Hart Residence in dull brass, scratched by time. I unscrewed it, its edges resisting slightly, as if even the metal hesitated to let go. Then I placed the new plate, smooth, dark, engraved with steady hands. Lunel Anders, resident. I stepped back and looked at it. It wasn't grand. It didn't announce anything to the world except the truth. I was here, still standing. A car slowed as it passed, a window rolled down. A woman I'd seen walking her dog from time to time leaned out, a smile on her face. "Glad you're still here," she said, warm and simple. Her voice carried no pity, no judgment, just kindness. My name hadn't even been spoken, but somehow I felt known. I managed a small smile, one that felt genuine, and nodded in thanks. As I turned to go back inside, something caught my eye. Near the steps, resting carefully beside a potted fern, was a small glass bottle tied with a pale ribbon. Curious, I picked it up. Inside was a single magnolia petal, pressed, preserved. My breath caught. A note accompanied it, folded in soft blue stationery. "Sometimes the worst storms wash us where we were always meant to be. I saved this bottle when I thought I'd never make it out. Now I pass it on." Era. I swallowed a lump in my throat. Ira, the neighbor with the quiet eyes and gentle presence. She had always nodded at me in passing, offered casseroles on bad days, and once sat silently with me after the police left. I had no idea she'd been holding on to something so symbolic. It was more than a gift. It was a torch passed between survivors. I tucked the note and bottle into my coat pocket, then made my way inside. I climbed the stairs to the attic where, months ago, I had discovered a journal and a letter. The journal had once pierced me like a blade. A place where my existence had been questioned, my worth debated in ink. And the letter, the last piece Malus had left behind. I carried them both downstairs, past walls that had once witnessed my shame, and into the backyard. The magnolia tree stood proud and tall, its blossoms luminous in the morning sun. At its base, I had prepared a patch of soil. In my hands, I cradled a young sapling. With fingers steady and careful, I planted it, right beside the old tree, roots to roots, past to future. I pressed the earth down gently, whispering words I didn't even realize I knew. Later, I sat at the kitchen table, a space that had once felt too large, too empty. I opened the journal again, found the page that had hurt the most. Lunel was a mistake. The words no longer cut. They no longer held power. They were just ink on paper, written by someone too broken to see clearly. I turned to the letter. "I don't know when I started hating you." I read every line, but this time, I didn't flinch. I let the words breathe, let them land where they needed to. They were real. They had happened, but they didn't define me anymore. Then, on a clean sheet of paper, I wrote my own letter. "They'll never say sorry. That's okay. I've stopped asking. I don't forgive them. But I forgive myself for waiting so long to choose me." I folded the page, sealed it in an envelope, and placed it beside the old journal and letter, a quiet ritual, a release. I walked to the living room window. Outside, the breeze stirred the trees. The magnolia's branches moved gracefully, almost like arms reaching skyward. The new sapling stood nearby, small and resilient. I stepped outside again, barefoot in the morning dew, and stood under the tree. I looked up. The sun filtered through the leaves like stained glass. It painted my skin with light. I took a breath and whispered, not for anyone else, but for myself, for the house, for the ghosts that still lingered but no longer ruled. My name is Lunel. This is my home. And for once, that's enough. Sometimes, the deepest scars aren't from what was done, but from what was denied. A name erased, a voice silenced, a child made to feel invisible. But in reclaiming her truth, Lunel reminded us that no one has the right to rewrite your worth. Have you ever felt like the outsider in your own family? What would you do if your past was rewritten without you in it? If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful family stories that echo real-life resilience. Your voice, your story, it matters.